Alrighty, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for making it out to our night before nationals performance. Tonight is a showcase for our usually students, that travel to our national tournament in April. It's night before nationals, not technically the very night before nationals, but it is a chance for those individuals who have been working all year long to show off the work that they've been doing. So I very much appreciate you guys coming out to see this. What you're going to see tonight is maybe a little bit different from what you would generally see in a public speaking setting. What we do in competitive speech includes debate, which a lot of people think of automatically, public speaking events, what we call platform events, which many of you in a 13-15 class probably are going to be doing those speeches. But what you're going to see from LeboneM tonight are going to be what we call interpretation events. These are acting events, usually centered around a genre and centered on a certain theme. And so you're going to see 3 different versions of that tonight. The first thing that she's going to be doing is what is called program oral interpretation. This is probably going to be the one that is least familiar to you, even going to see performances if you're familiar with poetry or other genres, because this is mixing a bunch of different things together. So she's got articles from different publications, she's got dramatic scripts, she has got some poetry in there as well, all centered around one single theme. After that, you're going to see a prose interpretation. In that second event, she's going to be playing just one single character, and you'll get to see that character played out over that 10 minutes, centered around a different topic altogether. And then finally, she's going to be doing her poetry interpretation. And those of you who are familiar with maybe slam poetry or poetry that you've seen on YouTube, this will be very much like that. So you're going to get to see 3 different genres of performances. Something that I want to alert you to is she is going to be opening and closing her binder. So I want to make you aware of what that's going to be looking like. She's going to come up here and start in with a performance always by opening the binder. About 2, 3, 4 minutes in, she's going to close the binder. That does not mean she's over. What that means is she is going to give you an introduction in her own voice, telling you what that particular performance is about, and then she'll go back into performing that character. So after she has performed the full 10 minutes, of course, we want a nice hearty round of applause for the work that she's done there, and I'll come back up and introduce the next event that she's going to be performing. So I'll come up a couple of times and introduce that to you as we go. If everybody could do me a huge, huge favor right now, check your phones. Make sure that they are off, turned on to airplane mode, silent at the very least, but please, 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 for her sake and for our recording's sake, make sure that those phones do not interrupt the presentations. Okay? Again, thank you for making it out tonight, whether it was for extra credit or you were just super interested in what I said in class. I think tonight's going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy the performances. Feel free to laugh if there is something funny. Feel free to cry if there's something sad, but just enjoy the performance, and we'll give her a hearty round of applause before and after each time. So, without further ado, we're going to start with our very first performance. Like I said, this is going to be a program oral interpretation, and our performer all night tonight is going to be LeboneM. Give her a big round of applause, everybody.
There is a saying that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But what happens when imitation crosses over into cultural appropriation and exploitation? There's an alarming new trend making national headlines that needs to be addressed. Blackfishing. Blackfishing is when a non-black person pretends to be black on their social media by culturally appropriating black features in an attempt to gain followers. Long before the future leaders of America were moonwalking with shoe polish smeared on their cheeks. The first blackface minstrels took to the stage in the early 19th century. Beginning in the decades leading up to the Civil War, troops of white men, women, and children darkened their faces with burned cork and traveled the country performing caricatures of blackness. These performances became one of America's first distinct art forms. On Monday night, Interview magazine dropped their new cover on Instagram. A hyper-urban shot of singer Selena Gomez with her tongue sticking out, dressed in black boots, leggings, and a Balenciaga X-rated top. On her head, The singer sported a braided hairstyle with baby hair edges. Gomez also appeared to have a darker skin complexion than she would normally have. She is done letting people control her narrative. Things I tell myself about my skin. I like it this way. Remember that time I questioned why God molded me out of tar and sky? Me neither. Remember that time I met a girl who thought bleach would lighten the burdens of her back? Me too. We, too often, educated by fools. A fool will say your skin does not make you a god. Well, my belief in it certainly does. Keith Rice, a black historian at California State University, states that it is ironic that the features being highlighted via blackfishing are typically the same features that have been targeted to discriminate against black people for centuries. Rice continues, when someone appropriates that body shape or black feature in general, it is a problem. What is more problematic is when that appropriation becomes celebrated because it is a white person doing it, when black women have been degraded for it for so long. In many ways, blackfishing is the modern day blackface. So, using the poetry, To This Black Woman Body, Part 1 by Alicia Wise, For the Colored Girls with 4A to 4C Hair by Kayla Janae Lacey, and Dear Black Girl by Candace Nicholas Lipman. Excerpts from The Atlantic, The Quad, CNN, and BBC. A program. Because imitation is not always flattery. In 2017, Kim Kardashian is accused of blackfishing in her KKW beauty advertising campaign. In 2018, the term blackfishing is coined by journalist Wanna Thompson in a tweet criticizing white girls cosplaying black women on social media. In a modern world engulfed by social media, several terms such as catfishing, cancel culture have risen to new heights. Among these popularized terms is blackfishing, a term often associated with A-list celebrities and internet influencers alike. But many people fail to understand its deeper offensive implications. From rapper Bad Baby, who appeared on Instagram deeply tanned in a black wig, to the styling of Ariana Grande, blackfishing has become an all too familiar cultural trope. The term was coined to reflect a perception that you are cosmetically enhancing your appearance through makeup and hairstyles to appear as if you have black heritage. For the colored girls with 4A to 4C hair, who've attempted relaxer when sheer moisture was not enough. In July of 2015, I cut my shoulder-length, relaxed hair completely off, learning to embrace the same parts of me that I had learned to hate. In 2018, Swedish model Emma Holberg, who many presume to be black or mixed race, is criticized heavily on social media when users find out she is actually white. Holberg, a 19-year-old self-described influencer known for her popular makeup tutorials, asserts that she does identify as a white woman and has never claimed to be anything else. In venues where black artists were often banned from performing and black audiences, if admitted at all, were forced to occupy segregated sections. White entertainers in blackface furthered the same paternalistic, degrading stereotypes that plantation owners and politicians advanced to justify slavery. This helped create a racist symbology that came to represent generations of prejudice. They don't teach little black girls how to love themselves in the suburbs or anywhere else for that matter. Because black hair gets matted, napped, and knotted, given grades based on good behavior. Good hair doesn't get put in a corner or in corn robes, need to be tamed because it broke the comb. Little black girls get their heart broken every day though. once read somewhere, growing up as a black girl in America is like being raised in a house and never seeing your picture on the wall. From the beginning, minstrel shows attracted criticism for its racist portrayals of African Americans. Frederick Douglass decried blackface performers as the filthy scum of white society, who have stolen from us a complexion denied to them by nature, as a way to make money and to pander to the corrupt taste of their fellow white citizens. And in 2022, white women are making money off YouTube videos, taking on the hairstyles, complexion, fashion of black culture. It has been over 100 years since the death of Frederick Douglass. And black bodies are still being exploited. Growing up as a kid, I hated my dark skin. And if I can be transparent, even now as a grown woman, I have to constantly reprogram my mind. Years of thinking I was not the standard of beauty. But see, that was a lie. My black is a boastful believer. My blackness is a silent scripture. It is all these workshops to all these children about all the self-love. Even when I tumble out feeling all this helpless, like the best way to teach a dark child how to love themselves is to be a walking example of a dark woman who loves herself. I am still walking. My feet have not tired.
So, I hope you were able to notice those switches in characters every time she was turning the page, and everything kind of centers around that overall theme of this idea of blackfishing, which is a fairly new term I think you got from the professor character that she was doing a couple of times in there. And I think it's really important that a lot of these issues are spoken about. I said earlier that each performance that she was going to do was going to be on a slightly different topic, slightly different theme, slightly different genre. The next one you're going to see is going to be a prose interpretation. What this means is she's going to be playing one single character, so when she turns the page, she's not changing characters, she's just changing thoughts or changing kind of time frames. So you're going to see one single character played here. The prose that she is going to perform for you specifically has to deal with what it's like to be a black mother in America and to fear for your black children, for what may happen or what they may be perceived as or what may ultimately as an adult happen to them. And so it centers around a lot of really heavy themes, so I just want to give you that little bit of a preface before we get started. So hopefully we've had enough time for her to get a drink of water, because I'm sure getting through these performances, her throat's going to get very dry. So our next performance is going to be a prose interpretation, again, from LeboneM. Give her a big round of applause.
Sleep goals. For baby to learn to self-soothe, fall asleep at night in the pack and play without nursing until asleep or rocking over a long time. For baby to have a consistent nap time. On the evening, a video is released of a police officer kneeling on the neck of George Floyd. Friend, father, homie, human, until George cannot breathe, until George calls out for his dead mother, until George slumps and dies. I stay up late tending to my hair. I do this in preparation for sleep training my son. The practice of combing out the knots in my head feel like both armor and surrender at a time when I cannot bear anything weighing my body down. It makes sense. in a time of racial trauma, to crawl back into the lap of my black girlhood and find the ritual that made me feel most seen, loved, beautiful, sitting at my mother's feet while she sectioned and braided my hair. This walk through my personal history is a portal for my rage. I drench my hair in water, detangle, and comb it out with painstaking slowness. I have not properly combed out my hair following my son's birth. I shed, and I shed, and I shed. I think of my own departed father named George. It is a good, solid name, one of my son's 3 middle names. I appreciate the way George draws from my mouth. Writing for The Atlantic, August of 2021, Leah Wright Ragner states, "Throughout generations, society has rendered black mothers dangerous. The American mythology surrounding the so-called menace of the pathological black matriarch of the 1960s, the treacherous welfare queen of the 1970s, and the drugged-addled crack mother and her babies of the 1980s. Recently, social justice movements have helped expand and shift ideas about black mothers and motherhood for the better, most notably through increased attention through the advocacy of black mothers who have lost their babies to police violence. And yet, much of the American public still understands black motherhood as an idea rooted in crisis. As feminist theorist Jennifer C. Nash explains in her book, Birthing Black Mothers, black motherhood has become a political position made visible only because of its proximity to death. Black Motherhood in Sleepless Times by Adressa Simmons Nastali. As I comb, pull, and twist, I think of my father, my husband, my son, my found family, my neighbors, my cousins. I think of every black man I love and know. I think of all the black mothers and what their hands are doing right now. Some of us are writing. Some of us are planting greens into the earth. Some of us are bearing the brunt of both COVID and the fear, grief that comes with racism. Some of us are praying. The goal of bedtime routine is to not put him to sleep, but to prepare him for sleep. Milk and sleep need to become separate functions. The last milk should end at least 20 minutes before he is put into his bed. The last 4 months, I have slept most nights with my son's warm body pressed to mine, his steady infant breath a hush landing on my breast. We have established a sort of choreography, both of us awakening throughout the night to find the perfect position for him to latch. As he sleeps, his mouth moves as if he is still nursing, still tethered to me. I look at his perfect face, watch his mouth dance, and try to not think this is the safest he will ever be. Someday my son may inhabit an America where he will no longer be the sweet baby strangers love to coo over, but the black man they fear. I must use the word may, as I reject a bleak future as absolute truth. We had to hire someone help us help our son sleep. I have paid someone to buffer me from my own tendencies of protection in pursuit of a higher good. I am a black mother living in America. You cannot blame me wanting to watch my son breathe all night. I am told all the ways that learning to sleep independently helps baby's brain development and leads to happier waking hours. I get it. Good sleep hygiene for everybody. But in sleeping next to me, my son is only getting light sleep. Light sleep, I am told, is where newborns spend 75 to 90% of their time. This is the sleep that comes in sips. 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. You want him to experience good sleep, the consultant tells us. My son wakes up every hour or so, eyes still shut, rooting blindly for my breast before latching and relaxing again. He needs to learn how to self-soothe, I am told. He needs to fall back asleep without the aid of my body. At his age, he has everything he needs to do so. I marvel at this. I am a grown woman. I do not have the tools to self-soothe my way to sleep, or Black people have learned to self-soothe in other ways. On the first night of training, protests erupt across the country. My son cries and cries for almost 45 minutes. On a night where my city breaks and burns, his frantic shrieks seem to join the weeping of the world. I've been instructed to sit in a chair beside him, positioned so he can sense my presence, hear me, but cannot see me. I expected this to be stressful. Impossible to fight the urge to scoop him into my arms. All night, I listened, one ear for my children sleeping, and the other for helicopters and sirens circling the neighborhood. Where I live, Black folks are ever ready. Activism is stamped in our blood and bones. I know I'm not going to sleep tonight. Being a Black mother is its own form of activism. I hear phantom cries throughout the night. I creep up the steps to lay a hand across my son's chest. He is sleeping sweetly, deep in the cocoon of sleep, while the world around him seethes. On the second night, sirens and helicopters circle again. This time, my son falls asleep only after 30 minutes. There is both magic and a touch of grief for me in this. Where he previously needed me to fall asleep, he is discovering his own ability to access rest. And while the city around us and the country we are nestled within breaks itself open and screams, "Enough," my Black child is learning a new superpower. I did not birth children to be afraid. I believe their lives are meant to be songs of jubilation, not lament. Most days I can hold on to this belief. Other days, I need them to believe in it when I don't have the strength to.
So, I mentioned earlier that we were going to be traveling in April to Nationals. We're going to be going to St. Louis, which is pretty exciting. This is my first time traveling since the beginning of this freaking pandemic, so I'm very excited to get on a plane. But it's important that you kind of see what is going on in these performances, not just as the performance itself, but as the message that they have to share. I may be mistaken in this, but I think that this particular performance is probably the nearest and dearest to LeboneM. For those of you who are not familiar or have not met LeboneM in person, I know a couple people are here just to see her. LeboneM is from South Africa, so she is an immigrant herself. And that experience, I think, is extremely unique. Those of you who are immigrants yourselves know what that is like, and I think it's unique for every immigrant, right? But there are certain aspects of being an African immigrant that I think she wanted to share in this message. And I always ask my students on the speech team, what is it that you care about? What are some things that you really want to share in your performances? And let's look for literature that's going to do that for you. And these were some of the first bits of literature that she brought to me, and we put together all of this poetry to represent the message that she wanted to share. And so this next program is kind of an ode to her experience as an immigrant. And I think that that is something really important for you to hear before you hear the performance itself. So before she comes out, let's give one last round of applause to our main performer all night long. Guys, this has to be very difficult to go. We never have 3 performances in a row from one single person. So let's give a big round of applause again to LeboneM Malone.
My accent has to answer in order to survive. Huh? What? Can you say that slowly and enunciate? Bro, just spell it. Dude, are you even speaking English? So let me get this straight. My homebred, homemade Ghanaian accent is too foreign for your ethnocentric taste? You've been imitating Forrest Whitaker talking about the key will now have the strength of the Black Panther stripped away. But all of a sudden, you can't navigate a conversation with me? I am an African child, born with the skin the color of chocolate, bright, brilliant, articulate. I am an African child. Lessons on being an African immigrant in America 1. Lose your accent. People make fun of the African girl, but nobody fucks with the black girls. Even when young, we can be so angry too. Don't stare at white people. They're not animals in the zoo. 3, when they stare at you like an animal in the zoo, do not be confused. Do not bare teeth when they reach out to pet you, to touch your hair without your permission. You are, after all, so exotic, so foreign, so other. Some would even call you inhuman. According to the Center for Migration Studies, in August of 2020, although the narrative around immigration usually focuses on Latinx people crossing the southern border, Black immigrants from Africa comprise a growing and significant part of the story of immigration in the United States. And despite the importance of all immigrant stories, the African immigrant experience is often overshadowed. Additionally, with few exceptions, the lived experience of Black immigrants very much mirrors the experience of Black American citizens. They encounter anti-Black discrimination and racial prejudice due to the color of their skin. They are often subject to the same risks such as poverty, lack of access, over-policing, and increased incarceration. Anti-Black racism has been present in this country since its founding. And despite the words etched on the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your hardened masses yearning to breathe free," the United States continues to demonstrate a complete lack of regard for people of color, whether native-born or immigrant. So, using the poetry, "I Am an African Child" by Eko Magret, "The Immigrant Experience" by Ya Kiramateng, and "Lessons on Being an African Immigrant in America" by Frequency, aka Mwendwe Katwiwa, a program. As an African immigrant myself, I shouldn't have to lose my culture to participate in yours. Dumalang! 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 Dumalang Gudra! Katlot Korkalwana Dumalang? Dumalang? Oh, I'm sorry. You seem so lost. Did this African put a curse on me? Maybe. You deserve it for all the immigrant bashing lately. I speak in a tongue twisted in the language of my ancestors. And you sit there, confused, trying to make sense of whatever it is you are feeling. Know that this is customary for us. Foreignness. Striving to fit in your soil, but here, on this stage, I manufacture a territory all my own. 4. With a name like Mwendwe, Kalandu, Katwiwa, the jokes will come. Do not envy your brother David or blame your mother Lucy. The way their names roll smooth off foreign tongues is proof that colonization and assimilation go hand in hand. You are, after all, your grandmother's legacy. They will call you alien. They will ask you who called your spaceship to crash land your brain-drained dreams on these eastern shores. These eastern shores have already landed ships from your world when we invaded it. But this is the 21st century, and we do not need chains to make slaves of people anymore. I am an African child. Okay, I get it. we pronounce it differently. You say evaporate, I say evaporate. You say hippopotamus, I say hippopotamus. You say inevitable, I say well, fuck. Some things are just hard to say. And it's not like I cannot speak English. Clearly I can. But every time I articulate for white American ears, I lose a portion of my ancestral wheel. And if we are being real, I don't understand shit you say either. But I have learned to go through it for your convenience. This is how I survive. If you don't understand, I suggest you go back to where you came from. Perhaps find another poetry event where you make the stipulations. Standard English only. Edit our grievances into an abstract. Build a concrete wall. Rewrite the Statue of Liberty poem. Whatever it takes to deep fry the skin into something so vile you can scoop us out of the melting pot. Then call us lazy? You who enslaved a whole race to do work you didn't want to do? I am an African child. I am the son, the daughter of the soil, rich in texture and content full of potential for a better tomorrow. Teach me discipline. Teach me character. Teach me hard work. Teach me to think like the star within me. 5. It's white lies telling families that they are enemies. We are identical twins, separated at birth, now strangers. The hardest thing we'll ever learn is how to replant a family tree whose fruits were exploited and whose branches are nooses. 6. When black people tell you you aren't really black, remind them of how Amadou Diallo's body looked no different than any other black man in this gradual genocide. And I know you may not call it that in this country, but believe me when I say we know what genocide looks like. We know what it sounds like. I am an African child. My accent is a tool meant to keep me safe in this country. Y'all, I go back home occasionally to stay connected to my roots. But my family does not seem to recognize me. I like to think it's because I've been gone for too long, but the truth is I have toyed with my West African accent so much that I became invisible to my own people. And still, here in America, people hide behind those smiles, huffing and puffing about the way I sound, wondering as if my accent is forged, as if I tribal washed it to sound more African. My accent is the realest thing about me. It has more than survived, been burnt alive, struggled its way through ice. My accent falls in love in 5 different languages. Kiahurata, Dianifuna, Diakutanda, Akislifio, I love you. 7. If you realize you were powerless to stop your metamorphosis from the African girl to the American girl, every time you break free from Western cocoon and fly back to your roots. Resist the urge to remain pupa in the silk of stolen comfort. Confront the turbulence that will shake your flight with the truth that you are no longer sure which place is home and which is foreign to you. My accent is an open map full of endless possibilities. It is why when you try to speak, I try my hardest to listen, to understand, to taste the salt in your accent. So why do you refuse to taste the sweetness in mine?
So guys, thank you again for coming out. We're gonna stick around for a little bit, but LeboneM, can you come out here? I don't know whether you're up on the stage or you're down on the floor. Are you around? Are you around? Are you around? Checking, checking. I just want to bring LeboneM out just one more time because, guys, this is a very difficult event to get into. This is something that people work on for years in high school and do it for multiple years in college and get scholarships to go on to other universities and do. And it is very difficult to memorize this many speeches and do performances like this. And whenever she was in my class last semester, LeboneM blew me away with her opening artifact presentations. Those of you who are in my class know an artifact presentation is like 2 minutes, right? And I was like, wow, this was great. And I said, come here, let's talk. And she shared her story with me and has been working with me. And at the beginning of this year, we had 5 students on the team, right? And it is a post-pandemic year, and I don't think we've fully experienced what this post-pandemic world has to offer. And they've had to leave to get other jobs for their family. They had to leave because they needed to make sure that school came first and they needed to get the grades that they needed to get. But LeboneM has worked her butt off to not only make the grades, but to make it to the national tournament, and I think that deserves a huge round of applause. So one big round of applause for her. Like I said, we're going to stick around for just a couple of extra minutes if y'all want to come up and talk to us for a little bit. But other than that, the performance is over. Thank you so much for coming out. I will make sure I pick up those extra credit forms. So if you signed in on the extra credit forms, you are good to go. If you hadn't signed those yet, please make sure that you do. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening, guys. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. Let's make sure these are in.
Okay.
This guy's been thinking the entire time.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Wait, don't turn it off.
And then hit which one? Just hit that?